This gospel of hip hop tells a story in a way where it relates to my story and my practices. So it's like, yo, I walk around with this, I open it up, we read it, we just get blessed from it. So it's a beautiful thing. I got a lot of other books too, but this is the one that I feel like this is foundation. This is deep. This is not just inspirational living. This is principles.
The journey of knowing thyself begins in the cradle and ends in the grave. One way to capture those moments of ourself can be found in the shelf. Shelves have been around since the creation of ancient scrolls. My name is Dr. Walter Hidalgo, and I'm a father, teacher, world traveler, and coach. Join me as we explore together the stories of our shelves. This is Know Thyself.
Watch this.
Peace.
Yes, sir. Beautiful family. This is Dr. Walter Hidalgo, and this is the Know Thyself podcast. Welcome. For those of you who are first-time listeners, the Know Thyself utilizes the metaphor of the shelf to extrapolate the self. Yes, sir. And the way we do that is we invite guests to come in and share stories about themselves. And before I introduce my guest, this is episode number 29. Yes, woo! That's dope. We made it. We're climbing. God is good. And as we always do in the Know Thyself podcast, we would like to begin by shouting out someone, a group of people out there. And I want to give a big shout out to all the teachers, all the educators,
my God,
all the people that I always I'm very I walk on eggshells when it comes to education, and I'll be a father. I say that because I don't think there's no important task that a human being has to do while on this planet than disseminate information into a human being's brain. That's a big responsibility. And I say that to say this: I have the honor to have with me someone that I love, someone that I respect, someone that when we talk about building with the gods, this is what I'm talking about. I have with me my brother, Professor Joseph Sanchez.
Thank you, sir, man. Thank you.
Peace to the God.
Man, we've been waiting a little while to do this.
I know.
We always build, man, and I really appreciate you inviting me over, man. I'm sorry that it took so long, but we could come back. This is just the beginning. We got a lot of work to do, and right now everybody just needs to be doing their own work, But in a little while we'll be collaborating and we'll be creating coalitions and committees that are going to be just as efficient and organized as everybody else's systems. So we're gonna really establish the culture of hip hop.
And it's dope. I'm glad. Before we get into that, because there's so many layers. We got so much to talk. And this is a regular day, being in the block type stuff.
You go where you gotta go.
So this is how we're gonna do it, because this is not the first time.
Give a shout out though. I want you to give a shout out to the Wu-Tang.
Oh, word? Why we giving a shout out to the Wu?
Because I know you love those guys.
Oh, man. Yeah. I'm a Wu head for life.
I love that you love Wu, man. I'm like, oh my God.
I think, it's interesting. I feel like one of the dope people that I've met in my life, immediately when you're like, yo, you like Wu? That's it.
Yeah.
We understand each other. We don't need to say it anymore. It's like, oh, okay, I know what you about, family.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, Joe, let's bring it back.
Yeah.
Let's tell our audience where you from. If we were to step back into Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, where would we go? Where would we, what would we see? So you are originally from?
I'm originally from Dykeman, from Washington Heights.
Shout out to Wash Heights.
Yeah, we're the neighborhood is Dykeman. That's what I call the Dykeman Valley. But it's on the border of Washington Heights, the northern side, which is 200th Street. Dykeman is 200. Thayer, I'm from Thayer, is 199. So we're on the border of technically Washington Heights and then the other side is Inwood.
Okay.
The other side north of 200, which is Dykeman and Post, Dykeman and Vermilion, the projects, that's all Inwood. So people are like, where you from? I'm from the Dykeman Valley because that's where I grew up. I didn't grow up in Washington Heights, like 186 and 174. That's its own hood over there.
Right.
It's the same hood, it's the same culture is what it is.
Right.
But it's more intense over there because there's more people there. And there's more traffic, and the environment is busier. You're almost on, you're like in a real city street. In the Dykeman Valley, it's a little bit more residential. At least those blocks are, but you're just around the corner from Dykeman, which now is a main tourist attraction in New York City.
Facts. Yeah.
So that's where I'm from. I'm from Thayer Street, Dykeman area. I was born in '72, so I came up late '70s, the '80s.
Right.
The '80s I was on the block the whole 10 years, and '90s I started leaving. I went to Middletown, and I started just bouncing around trying to do a couple of things. So, but I'm from Uptown, man, and it's dope. It's the way everybody, there's Uptown dudes that, it's like you said with the Whoop. You be seeing Uptown dudes, yo, you from Post? I never met this guy, and it's like, yo, like family, buying each other drinks, meeting family. I don't even know this dude.
And they call the heights Quisqueya Heights, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a huge influx of Dominicans that went there, and that whole the sociology changed on that. Speak on that, Joe, because that's your background, and you and I always build on that because history tells us where we're going.
Yeah, man. So Dominicans been in Washington Heights, I would probably say like 40 years at least.
Mm-hmm.
Longer than that.
Yeah.
But there's at least 3 good generations of Dominican American Washington Heights natives. We have at least 3 generations, which I would say anywhere from 30 years. There's there's like 3 generations of Dominican Americans that were born in Washington Heights. So that's all they know. So that's a community in itself. We have a lot of deep roots in Washington Heights.
Right.
We went through the whole crisis. We went through the financial crisis because it was already Dominicans in Washington Heights in the 70s and in the 60s. It was already Dominicans. My father came in, I think it was 65.
Oh, wow.
And he started setting grounds and setting roots over here. So Dominicans been here since the 60s, but look at it now.
Word.
It's changing, and a lot of Dominicans moved to the Bronx in the 90s. That migration traveled over to the Bronx, and the Bronx is a lot of Dominicans that came from
Shout out to the X.
The Bronx, man. The Bronx gets a lot of
facts, man.
The cultural diversity of the Bronx, man, and it's like, it's incredible. The culture of the Bronx is incredible, and people don't pay attention to it. People want to give it a bad image. People want to talk, but they want to come up and put the rents up.
That's a fact.
Or they want to build right here and not let the people over here rent there because we're getting new people from over there.
Right.
And it's like, you appreciate it to your advantage, but you don't appreciate it for what it really is, which is the lifestyle. And the people in the Bronx have even in Washington Heights.
Facts.
Washington Heights, we went through a whole drug era.
Yeah.
There was a time that, first of all, the first thing we started seeing was stolen cars. Then cocaine. Then people started selling. Then everybody started smoking weed. Then people started selling on the street, in your face, everywhere you turn. There was some transaction going on.
Yeah.
Then there was cars and people buying. It was just there was a drug market in our neighborhood.
It was like the real paid in full.
It was you go over there, you go over there, you go over there. You just gotta keep your eyes open because you're in the middle of interactions and transactions. So even when you're hanging out and with your boys, you don't know who's doing what or what's going on. You're in the park. We used to go to the park to be on something. We're separated from the space and we're meditating. Me and my boys, we used to go deep into the park. And I used to love it. And I still do that. But the streets, they evolved into people getting deported. They had a lot of people got deported in the 90s. Jail. I'm talking about 25 years for drugs.
I heard raids. They used to come in buses, school buses,
Big raid. Giuliani used to put on a mask and he used to go buy drugs uptown. And he used to buy drugs.
Get out of here.
Giuliani used to put a mask on, go to the 160s, The streets were almost locked down so that people could just buy drugs. He walked into one of them. We bought drugs. And he came back to the back and said, "Yo, the mayor just bought drugs." It was like, "Yo, what you doing here? Get him one bag, get him 2 bags, get him 3 bags." Distributing drugs, like.
Right.
Then you got the police department, corrupt, white boys, and it wasn't all white boys because I was in the police department too.
Wow.
That's before my career started. Well, that's what started my career. I was a New York City housing cadet.
Oh snap! I didn't know that.
Yeah,
about
it was
you,
a dope experience, man. I was in the uniform patrolling the streets of the South Bronx.
Like beat, you were on the beat.
I was on the beat,
Yeah.
and it was crazy because I saw it firsthand. The contact between law enforcement and petty criminals, or just street life. It was incredible, and I was like, "Yo, this shit is crazy, but this is not the way to stop it. Like, this is the problem, but this is not where the problem is rooted.
Right.
Like, we could stop this interaction, but this is a deeper issue." I was working in night shift, so I saw the housing, the living conditions of the projects in the South Bronx in the early '90s. It's not what it is today.
I heard
worse.
stories,
It was
man.
worse.
I even heard dudes like when they were. Someone told me this elderly cat in Harlem. He was like when they were doing reconstruction of buildings and like doing like cosmetic work. They were finding bodies behind walls. Yo, it was like I was like, yo.
That does not surprise me. Money too behind walls. Yo, dudes had so much money that they didn't know what to do with it. Like it was a problem. Like physically.
Wow.
Like money was a physical problem for these guys. Like, yo, we're gonna put the money. They used to get apartments just to put money. Like nothing in the apartment, just money, because we don't have enough banks to put all this money. It was just killing the game. But there was a lot of violence with it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, criminal justice supposedly.
And in the '90s, we're talking that gang era too.
Oh, that's exactly what that was gonna be my. That was gonna be my next point, but you brought it up. You came up in that.
That's
your era. Tell me about that.
It.
I really don't know it from. Or just give me a little summary of. I never really experienced gang like intimidation as a youth in Washington Heights, because my era they had gangs, but our gangs died out and they became breakdancing crews and hip hop crews. So I never was part of that old school 1970s gang. I was too young for that anyway. Right. But I saw them, and my brother probably could have been related, but I never experienced like the 90s gang era in New York. I've talked to kids about it, but I would like to hear your perspective because you're older than the kids.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like the East Coast, like particularly the Northeast, when it came to gangs, it came in waves. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because truth be told, and we had a segment on Know That Shelf called Gang Gang Gang, check it out. Mm-hmm. And in there, we talk about like one of the first gangs in this soil. I mean, gangs have existed since the beginning, right? But in this soil is here in New York. I mean, this is where so many people came off the boat, so to speak, and literally, and they started to gang up because of ethnic tensions and etc. So it's always ethnic gangs, and that's what we see till this day. It's ethnic gangs. You know what I'm saying? So in the 90s, I just remember, and I say that because, in the Bronx prior to hip hop, and we're going to talk about that, there were already gangs up there. Savage Skulls, right? Notorious. And then it kind of, I feel like it was there, then it came down, and then in the early 90s, a lot of the West Coast gangs started to come over here, but we also started to see a resurgence from the jails, like in Chicago and etc. So then I just remember in the 90s, like, I was growing up in Providence, shout out to RI in the South Side, and we had Bloods, Crips, Latin Kings, Vice Lords, Nietas. We had Asian gangs called Providence Street Boys.
Just to put things in context, this is like early 90s.
Yeah, this is 90s. It's like, I remember, so, in middle school, 8th grade was like 94 for me. High school was 96. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, 95, 8th grade, high school was,
all
was like 96
groups that you just mentioned is like, yo, they're notorious.
Heavy.
Yeah, notorious.
So I knew it was interesting because, like, and then going to college too, I still was tapped into it, but not so much. But I knew bad of my homies and family that were gang members. Like, I knew a lot of like Kings. I know mad nietas, Dominican cats, Puerto Rican cats. The Asian cats, they were the ones that were mostly, at least in Providence, that were Bloods and Crips. That they were like hardcore. Yeah, they rolled deep. We would go to parties, and luckily, what? Yo, I seen so much violence from my Asian brothers and sisters that I realized, like, at the end of the day, man, like, you know, I respect everyone and everything, that everyone is capable of something and someone, you know what I mean? And it's interesting, I seen like 40, 50 Asian dudes beat out of 2-3 people, you know what I'm saying, in a serious, stabbed up, killed up, beat up. I think it's just, you know, also the gang started infiltrating a little bit of the high school, and you know, you had friends that started joining, but I never joined. I was just affiliated. I just knew people that were really about that life and just said, yo, whoa, you ain't about this. Yo, whoa, stick to. So it's always like God was telling me, like, yo, chill out, homie, this ain't for you. But I can't help chilling with people that I love, that are my homies, that, you know what I'm saying? But they were involved in a lot of stuff that I just so happened to be around and be like, yo, go home at night. Like, yo, I just witnessed one of my good friends getting shot in the face type. And that's real talk. So it's a very interesting thing. So I'm very traumatized and thankful to God that I'm alive. And so when I see movies like Colors and Blood In, Blood Out, and hear about stories in New York, I would go to New York around that era too, and knew dudes that were making transactions from Massachusetts all the way down. You know, the rap lyrics, they talked about it a lot. I think it was Armageddon from Terror Squad that was like holding guns in Providence. Like, you know, Providence, and you know, has always been like a hub for transactions from, you know, the tip northeast Maine to New Jersey, New York. And
that's interesting you say that, because it goes back to the original conversation of the community. You know that the Dominican community is also established in Providence.
Oh, facts.
So you know that hub is connected to the hub over here.
Oh yeah.
So it's
heavy.
It's a bigger connection. You know, it's the connection you're talking about. But there's, and then in Lawrence, Massachusetts too.
Oh, Lawtown. A lot of people don't know about Lawtown. That's probably one of the hoodest places in America, kid.
Yo, I got cousins in Lawrence. Shout out to everybody in Lawrence, Massachusetts.
Respect. I know dudes that got down in Lawtown. So in Worcester, Lawtown,
those are hubs.
Yeah, Lawrence. What's the other one? Lowell.
You
know, areas that would
out
think.
There.
Yeah.
With my brother, man, some dudes. Yo, I don't want to get into the story, but it's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
But it's the Dominican evolution, you know, in the States. There's Dominicans registered in every state in America. There's at least one Dominican registered in every state. Yeah. So there's a lot of Dominicans, but it's the culture. Right. What's the culture? Like, even right now, we're seeing this whole conflict between business owners and, you know, gentrifiers. People are just moving to the neighborhood, versus, to include another element, the rowdy people in the block. Like, these motherfuckers in the middle of COVID, they're smoking hookah in the front of the building. I'm like, yo, you guys are not watching the news? Like, this is this is when it was going down.
Right.
Like 700 people dying a day that we know of.
Right.
People are hanging out, smoking hookah, niggas on mopeds, doing wheelies.
Right.
And it's all good. I understand it's fun, and you young, you do whatever the hell you want. You're in New York, but yo, on the real, you gotta be part of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Like right now, there's a bigger picture that everybody's getting sick.
Yeah.
So let's not contribute. Let's fall back. So, you know, let's just follow the rules. So now we'll get back to the hang in a second.
And you know that deflects what we're about, because we're sociologists by nature and also by our profession, right? So we always kind of look to critique this concept of individualism that we start to see, which is good. That we are unique and we identify as whoever we are based on what you feel God has made you to be. But we are not isolated islands, you know what I'm saying? And what has, you know, I've been asking everybody, how have you been through this pandemic? I talk about COVID and faith, because I know you're a brother of faith too. You know?
Yeah, man, it was, I'll tell you this much, man, it took me back to my Bibles right away. Like, I was on some, this is a real life situation. And it's my individual life, but it's also the whole city's.
Right.
Like I was concerned about everybody, but I was also concerned about myself.
Facts. Yeah.
So I had to hold myself down. I had my girl, which was a blessing. You know, she held me down. You know, we stayed together a lot, and we held each other down. But it was a serious situation. You know, you didn't know neighbors had it.
Right.
You see ambulances rolling up, picking people up, and it was like, yo, people are dying from whatever it is. I wasn't even trying to understand it. Cause that's another blessing that I've learned throughout my life, and God has taught me that, is that a lot of times you gotta be happy with the mystery. You know, like you have to not know for you to really know how to go about things. You know, like it's alright to not to know. I learned that because I always wanted to know everything, and I always wanted to make sure that I was doing my moves, knowing if it doesn't happen, it's gonna happen like that. You know, like set myself up almost to a point where my go wrong. But I've learned in the last 10 years that sometimes you don't have, once you're good with not knowing, it doesn't matter. Like I don't need to know everything why it happened. So with the COVID, I was like, I don't need people are arguing what this is. It's the 3Gs and this. Dude, I don't know where. I know people are dying from it, and this shit wasn't like that. Shit spread all through the train. Excuse me. It spread all throughout the city. Who God knows how it happened. I don't need to understand all that. What I need to know is I need to take care of myself now.
Facts.
So I got into a real a peace practice, I called it, where I used to wake up, I used to stretch, I used to do breathing exercises, I used to take cold showers, I was doing exercise, I was meditating, I was praying, like a time to pray. Like I'm gonna pray at this time. It's different than if you're just catching prayers all throughout the day and you're doing blessings. That's great, and that's what I do. But if you have a designated time that you're gonna pray, it just makes the prayer a lot clearer.
I think that's one thing that I've been hearing a lot from our elders, from the feminine energy, my grandma, my mom. Throughout this, that's the one common denominator that they've been saying. They ask me, how's it going? Is work okay? And then, you've been praying? You've just been praying. Like, don't forget to pray.
Wow.
Because we're spinning, because and I think this is a great segue to get into the next big part of how I know you and met you, because we were talking about how we met, and I think that it's during times of chaos and uncertainty where we can all but call the higher infinite power that's healing our people. Right? Some energy force that's out there that reminds us that there's more to us than what we're seeing, what we're hearing and experiencing in this playing field. And we always build on top of that, because for me, I'll share this with you. I've never really shared this in the public, but when I was 10 years old, like around 10 years old, because we were talking about the gang culture. That's when gangs were really starting to pop off around that time when I was 10. We're talking about.
I'm gonna just.
Go ahead. You're home. You're ready. Yeah. And I just remember.
I love where you're going with this, though. I love.
Because God's moving. You know how they do the energy. And I just remember 10 years old, Joe. Like laying in my bed, 10 years old, nobody, trying to understand, coming from the hood. When I stepped outside my house, totally different story. But inside, I had faith, I had family, Dominican, like Guatemalan culture, similar Latin, like faith, and shout out to the curly hair cats, because we're doing our curly hair tip today. Notice I always got a hat. Everybody's like, yo, Walt, show their hair.
I got my curl.
You know what I'm saying? We show them the wisdom hair. But I asked myself at 10 years old, is there more to life than what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing? And I feel like that sent me on just a question, but I was quiet and I was informally meditating, because I learned meditation through martial arts. Martial arts is my introduction to spirituality. I always tell people, because it was the first time someone told me to not think or reflect, just clear your mind, and the rest will follow. Right, as the song says. So I think that took me on a spiritual trajectory that I still, am processing to this day. And I think one thing that helped me navigate that is higher infinite power healing our people. And what I'm talking about is hip hop.
Yeah.
That's the way you and I build. That's the way you and I connect. and we can easily mention hip hop during the era when you were growing up, because there was light that was penetrating some tough times.
Yeah.
Because I interviewed a lot of people and a lot of the elders and OGs. One particular said, hip hop came at the right time because it saved a lot of my friends' lives, including mine. What's hip hop, yo?
Hip hop is wholly integrated people having omnipresent power. That's HIPHOP. Hip hop comes in three natures. There's a spiritual nature, which is spelled capital HIPHOP altogether. Hip hop. That's a spiritual nature of hip hop. There's a cultural nature of hip hop, which is capital HIP space capital HOP. Hip hop culture. That's the group. That's the group identity. That's the breakdancing. That's the elements. That's the communication, the body language. That's the way we identify with each other within groups. Hip hop culture. There's an expression that group has, which is hip hop. That's the cultural aspect. And then there's a product. That's lowercase h, lowercase I, lowercase p, dash to connect hip hop. Then lowercase h, lowercase o, lowercase p. Hip hop altogether, lowercase letters with a dash in the middle. That's the hip hop product. That's like, a hip hop album. Or I got a hip hop record label. Or I got hip hop t-shirts.
Right.
Or I got hip hop jams doing hip hop. That's the market. That's the product. They're all good. They all coexist with each other. One feeds off the other, and they're all interrelated. It's like this globe here, but it's different natures. So when we talk about hip hop, we got to know which nature we're talking about.
Right. Facts.
People are, hip hop starts violence. You talking about the product of hip hop, like the CD? Maybe that could cause violence. But has anybody done the research? Or is it the culture is teaching the kids to be violent?
Facts. Right.
Or is there a nature that's just, we're oppressed people and we gotta survive? We're still in locked up the whole 90 days. That shit is violence. And these people come back out. So going back to the gang thing that you were talking about, I was doing workshops in Rikers Island, and that's where I saw the gangs.
Yeah, in the jails.
This was like mid-90s. Rikers Island, Spotsford. I saw the gangs, and I saw them outside in the street too. So I knew there was a connection between this culture's coming from the jails. But why are so many people in jail? It's just incredible. Everybody was in jail. Everybody was
the prison.
Everybody had a connection, a relation to the criminal justice system, and it's like,
right.
You gotta pay attention to that,
Right. Exactly.
But so those are the three natures of hip hop.
Right.
And we should teach that. Like people should know that. Like I shouldn't read a magazine and people don't know how to spell the hip hop. Like which hip hop are you talking about? Like so that's one of the things that we work on, with the Temple of Hip Hop, which is establishing a standard of how we talk and how we discuss and how we market hip hop. Hip hop culture is our culture. This is what we do and this is who we are, man. There should be a way of talking about it, at least. Then there should be a way to teach it. And there should be a school for it. And there should be, we should have it. There should be a market. We should sell to our hip hop people. Not have other people sell in their markets. It's just like, you see how hip hop has gone? And I'm not taking anything away from anybody. But the evolution of it, it hasn't reaped the benefits. Like what the culture has to offer hasn't been given yet, and we know that. Right. So why don't we just organize and we make this happen? Like we could really teach hip hop.
Joe, talk to me about the beginnings of Temple of Hip Hop. Like for the audience that are never heard of them, that are living under a rock. But what is the Temple of Hip Hop? And is it does it have a space? Is it a place? Who's its leaders and founders, etc.?
Yeah, so the Temple of Hip Hop started in 1996, and it was brought together by KRS, Professor Z.
Shout out to KRS and Professor Z.
Of course, shout out to the Teach, and it was a movement to establish hip hop as an official culture, like we're a culture, and we're saying we're a culture. So let's make that clear. So it just started like that. Throughout the years, we've had a lot of people come in and out of the Temple of Hip Hop. There's cultural specialists, there's ministers, but everything is based out of the gospel of hip hop. So you can't be part of the Temple of Hip Hop if you don't study the gospel of hip hop. And that's pretty much. I'm sorry, I got thrown off track.
He's zoning in.
I zoned out.
And that's how we connected, though, because my book, shameless plug, always right beyond the four walls, the rise of ministry and spirituality of hip hop, is how we connected. Because I think what we started to see was, I believe, as my advisor and mentor told me, that we will experience a hip hop renaissance, and we're seeing that. We are manifestations of that as teachers in it by our own right. We penetrate the universities and colleges where we discuss the social, spiritual, what I like to call aspects of hip hop, because I like how it seems like you broke down. Laid it out in a hierarchical way, emphasizing the capital H's as the spiritual piece, because it comes from your thought and your mind, from the vertical sense, so to speak, and then we literally lay out the groundwork on a horizontal by way of how we manifest it through the different elements. You know what I'm saying? And I think Temple of Hip Hop speaks on that. It articulates it that, and the Pope of Hip Hop, KRS, the God, as I always says, is the one that goes out there and preaches it to us and philosophizes on it. And I think that's what hip hop does. It really brought the gods together to build, to discuss, and I think it's a disservice when people just take it for face value and don't take that time to build with their families or their children that are listening to this, because there's a lot of context. There's a lot of things that are being said from our culture that is speaking to our realities, current conditions. You know what I'm saying? And one of them being the protests that we've been seeing. We just heard of someone else being shot, 7 times in the back.
Incredible.
And
Missouri.
we studied, you and I are criminology, sociology heads, and, background in law enforcement. You have the recreational with the parks too, Joe.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all this with the protests, Black Lives Matter?
Oh, wow, man. It's like, I'll tell you this much, man. I never thought that I would live to see the day where the criminal justice system will be dismantled. Like, I never. I'll tell you this. I'll start from right there. Like, right now we're living in such a special time that we have an opportunity to dismantle the criminal justice system right now. I've been studying this since the 90s, and we philosophized, we created programs, we got funded to do programs, we've done proposals, we've taught in schools, we've debated, we've done conferences on how do we, empower the community that's a victim of the criminal justice system. Right now, this year, I saw how we could do it, and I never imagined it. I thought there was like something that was impossible, because I never pictured it. How do we dismantle the criminal justice system? Through restorative justice programs, cool, but those programs ain't gonna do nothing in a system that already exists.
Right.
You understand? It's like putting band-aids on the wounds, and then you got a bullet on your back, and it's like so. That's the way I see it. But I also see the fact that this was gonna blow up. Like, this criminal justice system and this whole, it was gonna blow up one way or another. But it happened through the COVID pandemic, and society started falling apart, and people started really seeing everybody's true colors. You saw everybody's true colors through the COVID, because it was survival mode. You saw who was surviving, who wasn't, who gave a about you, who didn't give a about you. Excuse my language. I shouldn't have been cursing.
We'll bleep it out, Joe.
Yeah, my kids are not around, and I think I could say whatever I want. Even though I say whatever I want, my kids, they be like, Dad.
Shout out to your kids, too. Joe.
Straight out, love them. So you saw people's true colors, and it was survival mode, and we saw how society responded, and even the police department, and even the mayors and the leadership of the countries and of the cities and the counties. It's like, yo, man, we live in New York, but we don't really know New York. You know, you step out of New York, and it's a totally different world, and it's like, I know that, but it's not only it's the values and the way they see society. And it's like, I mean, it's different for us. We're from the city. And we're here, we're hardcore. So I don't expect anybody to see it like I do, but it's different. And we got to get ready to grow and take our people to the next level. I mean, right now is the time to do it. If this doesn't happen now, we're going to wait for another pandemic and another 100 years to do something. You know, we got to change this whole structure around right now. The DOE is under construction. You know, all those systems are under construction right now. It's totally different. This is the way we're doing business now. You know what? We got to organize our culture in a way where we're going to organize our business. And it's not just financial business or monetary exchanges or transactions. It's more like, yo, we could teach hip hop. The kids could learn a lot from hip hop. It's like a sport.
Facts.
You know, but it's philosophy. You know how many lyrics we could analyze, and you know, can you imagine a hip hop literature class?
Facts.
Can you imagine a hip hop literature class that you're gonna analyze and write poems, or you're gonna write response papers to the Show and AG album?
Facts.
Yo, AG spitting facts.
Right.
Yo, he describes that neighborhood in that time like a poet through words, lyrically. Has anybody ever done that before? Like other cultures? This is a brand new art form. This is just rap, breakdancing, graffiti art. Graffiti art.
Now we got museums.
Yo, graffiti art. Yo, graffiti art had pieces on trains. Yo, think about that innovation. I mean, that's an innovation. Like who would ever think about, yo, we're gonna bomb, and they will perfectly bomb. They will do it. The trains would look like somebody grabbed the train and put it on his lap and sketched that shit. Like that's amazing, but nobody talks about that. Nobody cares. They say that they're criminals and they're vandals and they the train system, and these we were brilliant. It's a brilliant culture.
Right.
That came from the dust, you know, that came from the burn, you know, fire smoke. It's incredible. And beatboxing, you know, even the fashion. Hip hop has its own fashion. Hip hop has its own language. Yep. Hip hop has its own business. How you take care of business, you know, and it's something that we could teach, you know.
Joe, where can people find you? The information if they want to connect with you, collab. You're a professor. You're still teaching at hostels.
Yeah. I'm not teaching right now. I'm a student of public health.
Dope.
So I'm a student of public health and education program, and I'll soon be coming out with more information about that. But so I stopped teaching for now. But I was teaching at John Jay and I was teaching at BCC.
Okay.
Love it. I love the community. I love the students. I love the interaction. I really feel like that's what I do. You know, like I do a lot of things. But when I'm in front of a classroom and I got my curriculum and my students and we know what we're doing, I just blank out. You know, like it's almost like I don't have no problems. You know, like I don't have a life. Like everything is just the dynamics of the classroom and teaching, getting the information to them in a way where they're spitting it back at me. Exactly. Like get the whole learning cycle going, and I miss it, you know. I'm like, yo, I wish I was teaching. Like I miss teaching. I'm deep in the books right now, and it's like, yo, I need to get to the class so I could shake it off a little bit, you know. Because it's a lot of reading and writing and reading. And I'm like, yo,
tell me about it.
Can I share this with somebody? Like, can we at least have a conversation about this shit? They're going crazy with this. Yeah. But it's all good. I'm not complaining. You know, it's all good. It's another blessing. Man.
But if people want to connect with you and collab,
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is through Instagram, TOHHNYC. That's pretty much it. You know, you can hit me up on Instagram and, you know, check out the Temple of Hip Hop. You know, the official Temple of Hip Hop on IG. Minister Sun One, Minister Zinaru. You know, everybody's out there. The Temple of Hip Hop. The KRS-ONE.com. Check out the teachers' materials over there. And we're just riding out, man. We're just rolling out. And also, I want to say that we'll be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Declaration of Peace next May. So May 16, we're celebrating Declaration of Peace. And
give us a little.
That's during the Hip Hop Appreciation Week, 2021.
Facts. And give a quick history on the Declaration of Peace.
Yeah, Declaration of Peace. Yeah, Declaration of Peace. KRS-One and a lot of other pioneers, they were gathering up throughout the years when there was a lot of violence in hip hop. They were having these meetings of the minds, and they were creating and collecting notes from the meetings. Officially, it ended up being they created the Declaration of Peace for hip hop, and there was hundreds of quotes, and they narrowed it down to the 18 principles of the Declaration of Peace of how hip hop should conduct itself in public and in private. Well, not in private, but in public, and how we should define ourselves as a culture. So they came up with 18 principles for the Declaration of Peace. They took it to the United Nations and partnered up with UNESCO, and they created a whole ceremony, like a whole weekend of peace talk in hip hop and who we are. And they established hip hop as an official culture of peace in the United Nations, international. Like hip hop is known for being a culture of peace because of the Declaration of Peace, because of the leadership. So that's the Declaration of Peace. 20 years later, we're gonna celebrate it next year again. But this year, I'm gonna try to see. Well, we're trying to see how we could utilize it better. You know, could you really teach that? Do you really teach principles? You know, how do you get that out? Is it something that you get out? You know, of course we gotta live it, but how do we practice it? There's a lot of violence going on. You know, do you have any ideas, or if any of your listeners have any ideas? You know, there's a lot of things that we could do, but I want to be really open-minded about how we approach it. And it's not just me. It's, of course, a lot of people. This is not a Joseph Sanchez. This is a culture. This is the nature. You know, this is the force that's gonna give birth to the next step. But
I appreciate that, Joe, because what we're saying, folks, is this is a calling. We're calling hip hop right now to step up. You have collaborators, you have supporters, you have educate. We're starting to see a proliferation of hip hop pedagogy coming, but it's still insufficient and still not getting the accolades and support that it deserves. And you know, before we close out, I just want to say, Joe, I'm proud of you, my brother.
Thank you, sir.
Love you.
Well, thank you.
You know, you have inspired so many people you don't even know. And as an educator, I think it, you know, as we always do, we close out with a quote. So as an educator, I think you'll appreciate this quote. And it comes from Benjamin Franklin. And it reads as such: tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. Peace, family.
Peace, man. Thank you for having me, man. Peace.
Peace to the gods.